Hey folks, welcome to the Arsaholics podcast on a Monday night. I have just one co-star with me today. His name is Aaronin. Hello, Aaronin.
Hey, co-star. That's a good one. How are you?
Do you like it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, are we all co-stars? No, Myers is also a co-star as well, and so are
I
you.
don't know. I don't know. It depends on the company. It depends on the company. Well, co-star. Yeah, if you're a co-star, I am also a co-star. So obviously, everyone you got Raj as well as per usual, I guess. So yeah, it's a real contrast from recording at this time last season. This time last season, we were recording after our first game of the season, which was also a Friday night, which was also under the lights, away from home, and we were uh, getting ready for a long season after losing 2-0 against Brentford and having half the team suddenly come down with this virus and injuries and God knows what. And it was a completely different story this time round. A beautiful preseason, which we covered in our last episode, just built up to this away game at Crystal Palace under the lights on the opening day. We thought that the gods from Sky Sports had royally screwed us over by giving us another Friday night game, but it was redemption season. It was, you couldn't have scripted it any better. We lost 2-0 last season and we won 2-0 opening day this time round. The team was far different. It was a lot more, it was a very different team in terms of not just personnel, but where we are in our evolution. And we went to a team that we lost 3-0 to last season in a really tough away game last season, where that really derailed a crucial kind of point of our season. And it's completely different tonight when we're reflecting on this 2-0 victory. Aaron, and how do you feel, mate? It's just so bloody nice to open the season with a win, isn't it?
Yeah, man. I think I said in the last episode I really wanted us to win this game over. Like, if you look at the next five, I wouldn't mind as much if we lost one of the upcoming games. But this game we had to win purely for like the vibes, and because this is a bit of a story, right? Like you said, this was Friday night under the lights. Sky rolled out Carragher and Neville. They were ready to stick the knife in again. They were ready to start dancing with the fans all over again. And I think we had a good pre-season, and what we needed was like one data point to say, like, okay, do we have the potential to translate this into Premier League points? And we did it. We did it. I think it probably didn't go as we imagined, and we'll probably talk about this. But for the first 20 minutes, I was like, this is, we're going to win the Premier League. But no, reality kind of struck a little bit later on in the game. But just, we really needed to come away with 3 points then, because, there's the tone it sets for the season is now so much more positive than the tone we had this time last season. We've gone away to a really good Crystal Palace side. And for the first half an hour, we made them look really ordinary. And again, we'll talk about this throughout the game, but ultimately, I think we stood strong and we came away with 3 points and a clean sheet, and that's 3 more points than we got last season in that same place. So, really happy, really excited to see what we do next, and look forward to discussing it.
Absolutely, man. I mean, listen, Palace lost 4 times last season at home. Only 4 times. All those times, it was only by one goal. So to do that, like you said, it's a tough place to go. It's such a hard place to go. I was thinking about this before we went to Palace. I'd rather go away to somewhere like Chelsea than I'd go away to Palace. And I don't know whether that's because we've actually got an okay record at Chelsea, but it's just such a tough fixture. I don't know what better way to put it. It's that there's something really unique about it. There's almost some kind of phenomenon about it. It's just it's a place you just don't want to go. So many teams have had their seasons derailed there. Remember when Liverpool were on the verge of winning the title? It was that, when they had Suarez and at the end of the game he was crying. I think they threw one up. You don't, Palace away just is. Oh. And you know what? It's also, whatever said and done about great start to the season, this, that and the other, to just get the fixture out the way
Yeah.
is brilliant. You know, we're not gonna have another crucial part of the season where, oh crap, it's Palace away. That's gone now.
Yeah.
That's done, isn't it?
Yeah, that, and we just need to get. I don't know when Newcastle away is in the fixture list. We just need to get that one out of the system as well early, hopefully, and then yeah, we can crack on. No, you're right. I think one thing that I think actually really helped us. Now I think about it is the signings, especially of like Jesus and Zinchenko, right? This. I think the Premier League experience really helped here because if you had a footballer that's come in from let's say the Spanish top division or from France, for example, from Liga, and they said we've got Palace away, he'd probably look at the table. I don't know where Palace finished, like 12th or something. So you're going away to the team that finished 12th last year. You'd think, oh, this is like quite a straightforward game. But with Jesus, with Zinchenko, I think they know, right? They know what Palace away is. They know it's tricky. They know it's tough. And I think that 1% extra they probably give, saying, actually, we can't treat these players like mugs. We know how hard it is to come here and win. We've done it. I think those little things helped us get over the line as well. Just the fact that we know, like, no one underestimated that game. We had to be on it from minute 1 to minute 90. And even then, we got a little bit of luck. But the mentality to be switched on your first game of the season is something that we shouldn't underestimate. And we should really credit Mikel Arteta and the players for just going in with the right mindset. Because we've seen it so many times where we just don't look ready. And we definitely, all the hard work in pre-season looked like it paid off on Friday night.
I completely agree. It's a really good point about the mentality part and the advantage of signing players from the Premier League. It's almost a bit like if you're signing a player from another league, they would look at the Premier League and look and say, oh, who are the famous teams, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United, also maybe reconcile that slightly with the league table and still come in with the mentality that I think most leagues have, which ultimately is that if you are one of these big clubs, you probably are going to walk over teams that are 12th, 13th, 14th, and below, like those kinds of teams where Palace sort of finished in that region. But if you're someone who is from the Premier League, you know Premier League's not like that.
Yeah.
Even a 4-time Premier League champion is going to know that you have to be on the top of your game when you go places like Palace. So it's a really good observation, and I think we certainly saw that, right? But there is a slight contradiction to what you said, which is that there was someone who came from France and had a storming game. We'll go into for a second, but like I think, I guess before we go into some of the players specifically that I know we want to touch on, and what we're not going to do today on the podcast is go into all the specific instances of the game, given that it's been a few days and everyone's seen every highlight and read numbers of match reports. But it's nice sometimes when you record after a few days, isn't it? Because when you record on the whistle, it's fun because it's quite raw. You've got all the emotion going on, but you've not necessarily had time to sit back, analyze, and really kind of gather thoughts and sort of look at some analysis that makes you see something that you hadn't seen previously. And we've sort of had the pleasure of doing that. And I think it's been really interesting, Aaron, because you and I went to the game. We were really fortunate enough to be in that travelling contingent, who were amazing, by the way, as always.
Yeah, so good.
So good. So much fun. The songs were brilliant. We were privileged enough to be part of that. But I think that I speak for most fans in that section, in our section, which is that, as much as we dominated that initial sort of 30 minutes that you've alluded to, 30 to 40 minutes, it then kind of went very differently, it felt. And it really felt, particularly in the second half and the last 5 minutes of the first half, that we were getting dominated. That's how it felt to me, that we were getting dominated, and it felt like we were in a lot of danger quite frequently, and it felt like Palace were always on the brink of scoring, and in the end, yes, great, resilient, and we counted and scored a second goal at the end, but it did feel like we had to hang on a bit. Have your thoughts on that changed now that you've had a few days to settle on it and seen the replays and looked at the analysis? Have you got any different thoughts?
It's a tricky one. I think we obviously, there was something very different from the first, let's say, the first phase, or the first 30 minutes, where we looked really good. And thank God we scored during that period as well. And then maybe like 10 minutes before half time, and then pretty much most of the second half until we scored that second goal. Now, with hindsight, thinking back now, it does look like that we started to sit back, and we started, for whatever reason, to invite a bit more pressure on. And I don't think that was the idea. I don't think that was the game plan. But for whatever reason, we allowed Palace to get a stronger foothold in the game than we probably would have liked. Now, look, I don't think it was ever realistic that we'd maintain the first 25 minutes for the entire 90, because there were periods where I was like, actually, we look like the home team here, because we were just comfortable on the ball, dominating, really doing well. And I was like, oh, I wonder. But Palace were always going to come into it. But I think what worried me, and will probably worry Mikel Arteta, would be the fact that we couldn't really wrestle back control once they had got control of the game again. I think we set back, we freaked out a bit. I also thought Palace started playing really well. I thought, what's his name, Anderson, the centre back, I think he is, and Decore, the defensive midfielder, both had really good games. And then our midfield struggled to deal with what they were doing, and I thought, and I don't know why that happened, because if you think about it logically, it's the same players, they have the same ability. They haven't all of a sudden become worse. We're in front, so you'd argue that we should be more confident, but for whatever reason, and it is a bit of a trend, we do seem to drop off. And I don't know if that's confidence, I don't know if that's mentality, I don't know if that's fitness or energy, or just the fact that they don't believe that they can dominate a team for 90 minutes yet. We did struggle, but did we get dominated? I mean, I don't think Palace had that many shots. I know Ramsdale had to make some really good saves, but it's not like they were battering our goal. It's Palace. It's Zaha, for example. Zaha is a tricky player who is gonna make any defender he comes up against look worried, because if they're not worried, they're not concentrating properly. They're not taking him seriously enough. So, I think they had some dangerous moments, but I wouldn't say we got battered. Would you?
At the time, I felt that we were hanging on. I really felt that way. But after getting home, watching the game again on Sky, which I recorded, watching the kind of punditry afterwards, and then kind of just looking at some of the analysis that's been floating around, looking at the stats, I started feeling very differently. Do you know what I thought about today? It reminded me of a game a long time ago when, and I'm going to do Palace a big form of flattery here. We played Bayern Munich at home many years ago, and I remember in that game we won that game, and I remember in that game at one point feeling, this is the Wenger era. These were games where we play against big teams, and frequently, we knew we were going to fold. We knew that they were going to be superior, and you were going to fold. And I remember this game against Bayern Munich thinking, okay, God, the same thing's happening again. They've got possession. We're going to get dominated. And I remember at some point feeling, hang on a minute, today's a little bit different. Today actually looks like we're okay with this, almost like we have planned that if this happens, which it's likely to happen, this is what we're going to do, and this is who's going to go where, and we're going to stop them being able to penetrate us and all that kind of stuff. And we went on one that game, and I remember,
is that the one that Ozil scored?
At the end, at the end, and it was Giroud, I think, who scored the first goal. This similarly, now when I reflect on this game and look at the stats, like you said, it was the second half that we really felt like we were getting dominated in inverted commas. But Ramsdale made one save. They had one shot on target, and they had 3 in total. So being dominated, if you're being dominated doesn't result in you conceding 3 shots on goal and one shot at your goalie. That's not dominated. That indicates that whatever happened, you managed that game pretty well. Like, even if you conceded possession, you were preventing the opposition team creating chances and doing anything that was doing much that was going to penetrate. And that was backed up by the expected goals. The expected goals showed Arsenal higher than Palace, even though it really did feel like we were on the cushion. I think we should, therefore like talk a little bit about some a couple of the individual performances, right? Because I think the defensive, the back five, clearly knew they had a job to do today. When you're at Palace, at some point you're going to have a job to do. At some point it's going to get tough, and they did have a long time when it was tough. And so you had William Saliba, who's making his Premier League debut. So let's just cast this story back a little bit again. Don't want to be too indulgent, but we signed him at 18 or whatever it was, paid quite a lot of money for an 18-year-old, and he's been on loan for 3 years in France at 3 separate clubs, including the club that we signed him from. He's had 3 different loan spells. His last one was incredibly successful. We've already touched on all the great last episode we talked about all the great things he achieved, and he has then made his Premier League debut away at Crystal Palace, and he's won man of the match. It's the kind of, just on paper, when you write that all down, it's the kind of thing where you think, okay, if you want to write a playbook on how to sign a talent, get the most out of that talent until he's ready for the Premier League, and then play him. If you wanted to get a playbook, this is basically it, right? It doesn't really the story doesn't get better than that in theory. What did you think of his performance? What did you did see him in pre-season, but what did it tell you?
Yeah, I thought he was magnificent. I thought it was really impressive how, a player like that can come in, and especially at Arsenal with the fan base, there was a lot of hype around this player, right? Saliba probably has the most amount of the fans, or stans as they call them, on Twitter, right? Who will defend him to the death. But it's very rare that you get a player that comes in and immediately justifies the hype. We signed this 18-year-old for 30 million quid. Everyone's like, who the hell is this guy? There was a bit of talk about him when he was a bit younger, but no one really knew him, and he's sort of just gone under the radar a bit outside of Arsenal, right? I think a lot of non-Arsenal fans would not have thought, oh, Arsenal have got Saliba this year, they are going to be challengers, their defence is going to get better. But actually what's happened is he's come in, and look, it's been one game, so let's not get carried away, but he's come in and he appears to have made our defence look better. Which, when you've got 2 really good centre-backs, who I'm big fans of both of them, in Gabriel and Ben White, to come into that back four and to say, I am going to improve what was already a pretty good back four, in my opinion, that's fair play to him and credit to him. I think just the fact that he's come in and he looks good, but he also looks so calm. He looks so composed. He's comfortable on the ball, but he also backs himself in those kind of last-ditch tackles where he has to dive in. And there were a few examples of that on Friday. I thought it was very, very impressive. And, if he continues like this, there are going to be different challenges. There are going to be trickier players. There's going to be aerial players. There's going to be, players that get the ball on their feet, for example. Oh, your dog's a big fan too.
He's also a big fan of either her reflection or a fox that's outside. I can't really see what it is. But anyway, sorry, okay. Carry on.
Oh yeah, so different strikers, including a fox in the box. See what I did there? But he dealt with Edouard and then Mateta for a bit. He dealt with both of them really well, and I think he looks really imposing. He's just an imposing looking guy, isn't he? So I think he just makes our defence better, and long may it continue.
Everything you said, I totally agree with. That he was the resounding thing in my mind after the win. Of course, I was happy with the win, but the day after, I was just thinking, this guy is incredible. You say it's one game, and I completely agree, but it was so hard, mate. I'm finding it so hard to not get carried away about this guy, because there's sometimes in football, I find particularly this happens. I think when you're live, when you go and see a game live, there are some times where you see players and they just look a bit different. They look a bit different gravy. Maybe it's physicality. There's something about them. Alexis Sanchez had this, in my opinion, when I'd see him on the pitch. There was something about him that looked slightly superior to everyone else that was around him. And I know he's a short guy, so that wasn't height-wise, but there's something just about the energy. From a defensive perspective, the time that I felt it the most was Virgil van Dijk. Seeing Virgil van Dijk play at the Emirates, I thought this guy's just different class. There's just something about him. There's an air that I think it was partly about how even strikers and players around him were just avoiding him almost. Just something about it, like. And watching William Saliba, I'm not comparing him to Virgil van Dijk in terms of ability, because Saliba's got a long way to go before he can claim to be Virgil van Dijk levels. You've got to win stuff, in my opinion. But in terms of those ingredients, that physicality, that presence, that the pace, the reading of the game, the calmness, like you said, so calm. There was never a moment where I felt, even when he was making a sliding tackle, I felt that he always knew that he was going to get there. Like, he knew he was making that tackle. That was fine. That was a calculated, I'm standing here for a reason, and I know if I need to make that tackle, I can make that tackle, so I'm going to make that tackle. And it just, I made a comment a while ago about him being reminding me of Rio Ferdinand. Mize also made that comment. Gary Neville actually made it after the game as well. He's just got this thing about him, and I think that he was a huge part in why actually we weren't really dominated. He was so efficient in cleaning up, really helpful to Ben White on that right-hand side, who I think we should talk about as well. But it's just, you're not going to have that many bigger tests than Palace away. And I know you can, I don't know, a lot of people criticise Palace's front three and saying, they didn't have good strikers or whatever. You know what? Wilfred Zaha is a very good player. And, he had a lot of time to spend with Saliba. So, I was really, I don't want to get into the topic of who do you think starts and all this kind of stuff. But, did you get a feeling that actually this is a guy who is trying to make a stake for number one central defender at this club?
I think I got the sense that this is a guy who just backs himself in everything he does. He's been a top level player at the academy level. He's come in with a lot of hype. He's known that that the club obviously believed in him at age 18 because we paid a lot of money for him, and maybe in 5-6 years time we'll hear from him about this period and how he felt during this period. And we made mistakes, and that's clear, in terms of that time where we didn't send him out on loan properly, for example. But generally I think we've kept him well looked after, we've developed him in the right way, and now he's a player that I think really does believe that he thinks he should be playing at this level. Yep. But he's not sat there going and doing interviews about it. He's like, well, I'm just going to come here and I'm going to boss pre-season, and then when I get a start, I'm going to take it. Yep. And I think he's the type of player now that doesn't, it reminds me a bit of when like Saka came into the team, where it's like, he knows he's good enough at this level now. And he knows that if he carries on playing the way he does, he will be in the starting 11. And at Arsenal, you don't have that question of like, is he old enough? If you're good enough, you're ready and you will play. And I think he knows that. So I think that the place is there for him to take. And I don't think we should go into this debate about who starts, because we never know. But I do actually think that maybe some of the online debate around Ben White, for example, is probably due to the fact that Saliba is there, and there are a lot of Saliba fans. There's probably not so many. I haven't seen many Ben White fans on the internet. So there's
a lot of ladies who are. There's a lot of ladies who are Ben White fans. Yeah, it's a very,
maybe they should chip into the debate on if he should play right back or centre back. But it's just a case that it's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have, and that's
it is.
I'd rather have this conversation than should we play Granit Xhaka at left back again?
Do you remember the conversation? Geez, Mustafi or Socrates? What's it going to be? No. I mean, one last thing from Saliba, from my perspective. I personally think, given his age and given the quality that he's shown, I think that him signing a new contract at Arsenal may be one of the biggest economic and footballing decisions, impacts, whatever you want to call it, for Arsenal over the last decade. I really mean that, because at that age to be that good, let's just say he stays that good roughly, how much does it cost you to replace a player like that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it'll cost you a lot, and even if you buy a player like that, there's no guarantee, that player is going to be, ready to play week in, week out. And look, I share your enthusiasm. I'd give him a few more games before we give him the biggest contract of the decade title, but I would.
Yeah, I guess
yeah,
what I say is I'm not saying we should pay him 400 grand a week.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
I mean, like in terms of
future,
like magnitude, I agree. I think it's he's got 1 year. Is he in his final year now, or he's got?
I don't think he is in his final year. I don't think he's in his final year at all. I think he's got a couple of years.
Okay.
I do think he's got a couple of years, but I think it's one of those that you're like, oh shit, you don't really want to get him into his final year. If the thing is, if I was him, I don't know what I'd be doing at this point though. I don't know if I was him, whether I'd be. I think he's
exactly, but I think this is a wider thing on player power and contracts, where actually good players now are probably much more aware that they can run their contracts down and get better deals. And he's not one that I feel need to worry about. Okay, will I have somewhere to go in a year and a half? So yeah, I think if I was his agent, I would be telling him definitely don't sign a contract. But I think it's on us as a club to make him feel that this is a place where he's loved, and B, a place where he can then go on and win things. Because if he carries on this trajectory, he will be demanding to be winning things in a few years' time.
Yeah, completely agree. So brilliant. Listen, I mean, I really hope we're talking positively like this is about William Saliba for the rest of the season, because if we are, then it means that we're winning games, really. Ben White it was an interesting topic of debate after the game, partly because he a lot of what Palace did well was down their left hand side. Wilfried Zaha was there. That was why, and there was a lot of debate on Twitter and social media, I felt, about Ben White's performance. It was really interesting because it was the area that we called out before the game in our preview. The area that we probably talked the most extensively was Ben White at right back against Zaha. Literally, that was the scenario we discussed, right? And in truth, that was the scenario that got a lot of attention, post game. Zaha was seeing a lot of the ball. He was taking on Ben White a lot, and interestingly enough, again, the stats don't really back up that Zaha got the better of Ben White. In fact, I saw a stat which essentially said that, words to the effect, I can't remember if it was 5 years or 6 years, but essentially, Ben White made more successful tackles in the game against Palace than any Arsenal player has made in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, so I've actually got that stat.
Oh, go on, brilliant.
So
I hope I've quoted it.
It was close.
Okay,
he made eight tackles against Crystal Palace on Friday. Yeah. The most of any Arsenal player in a Premier League game since January 2019. So it's not as long as I said 5 to 6 years.
Yeah. Oh well. Still, it's a few years. Huh?
No, I think he had a good game. We briefly discussed this on the way out from Selhurst Park on Friday, where you thought he was getting done and he lost control, but ultimately I think he's not the strongest one-on-one defender, right? I think I'd probably rather Tomiyasu if I was going one-on-one with Zaha than Ben White. I think that's clear, but I don't think he had a bad game as such. I think that they defended well as a unit. Whenever Ben White got beaten, Saliba was there to clear up. Whenever any of those Palace attackers managed to get through, Ramsdale was there to make a really good save. But the fact is, when you come up against Zaha, you are going to get run at. He's going to take you on. That is their game plan, right? Yeah. Palace's game plan is give the ball to Zaha, tell him to run at the defender, and usually make them look very silly and either get a shot away on goal or pass it to someone in a more dangerous position.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, Karen.
Yeah. So no, I think he and the fact is, whenever Zaha did beat him, either Saliba did clear it up, and there were times where Zaha's final ball wasn't great, for example. But I think I think you need to evaluate a defender not just in these one-on-one situations, but what else he gives you on the pitch. 100%. And actually, on the ball, what he does positionally, how he distributes the ball from the back. All of these things contribute to us being good as a team. So there is every chance that we bring in a hypothetical defender who Zaha never gets past because he's so good one-on-one. But as a team, we are far, far worse.
Yeah, 100%.
And actually, the way the top teams play now, right? You know, the fullbacks don't. They're not there for their ability to defend one-on-one. They're there to build possession, to attack. They can't be rubbish, but a lot of the good defense, like a lot of the top fullbacks, their strongest skill set isn't defensive one-on-ones because, you get a good winger, you get a tricky player, they are able to beat people. It doesn't matter how good a defender you are. The best wingers, the best tricky, wide players can beat their man. And that is something you've just got to deal with.
And it's also, do you know what? It's even more so than that, right? It's because sometimes when you have a right back, like you described, say you put a right back who is a great defensive right back and you say, listen, do a job on this winger, then you're playing a system, like you say, which is setting yourself up to have that right back essentially be on that winger. Now, if you play that system and if you play Ben White in that system, I still think he'd do a decent job, but ultimately, as we discussed, defending against a winger isn't necessarily his strongest suit. But the thing is, when we're playing Ben White in that position, we're not playing those tactics anyway, right? Like you mentioned. And when we're in possession, again, we talked about this in the last episode, when we're in possession, we're very specific in how we set up, right? We basically end up having 3 in the central in midfield and 5 up top. We have 3 in central midfield, which becomes Partey in the middle, and the 2 inverted fullbacks going into midfield. So they're both coming centrally. And we noticed that during the game many times. We saw like Zinchenko taking up amazing positions centrally. So they're coming in centrally. You've got the 5 who are up top, and that is creating a lot of space. There's a lot of space in behind, right? There's a lot of gaps wide for counter-attacking teams, in theory, to try and pump balls out to. But what you hope is, with those players parked very centrally, it's very hard for teams to actually break. And what you also hope is that your wingers in this situation are going to have to do a lot of defensive work. Now, if you're going to play that system, there's no point saying if it's Ben White, if it's Cedric or whoever it is, it doesn't really matter because you're playing them in a system where they're always going to be exposed by a right winger, right? Of a left winger. They're always going to be exposed. And here's where it's worth commenting on something that Jurgen Klopp said a while ago when he talked about how Liverpool play. Liverpool played Arsenal. This was, I think, at some point last season. It was the game, I don't know if you remember, it was the game where Roy Keane said at half-time, he made a comment about how Liverpool were actually sloppy. Even though Liverpool were winning, he said something like Liverpool had been sloppy or something like this. And at the end of the game, Jurgen Klopp obviously had heard what he had said, yeah, and he said, and in his post-match, he basically just completely caned Roy Keane. And he goes, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. This was, was one of our kind of best performances, blah, blah, blah. And what he drilled down in saying is that when you play tactics at an elite level, that is getting you to have elite attacking potential, you are absolutely going to be doing things like exposing your goalkeeper or exposing a certain player. And what you do in those situations is you rely on having a goalkeeper or a player in a certain position that is that damn good that they can deal with it. And that's how you're playing
Liverpool's
at
that high line. Right,
yeah,
I think
exactly.
Keane kept saying that Arsenal kept getting in behind.
Yeah, exactly. And he was basically exactly. So he made the point. He said, "You play the way we play. What the hell is going to happen? Like that's going to happen." So in the same way, you play the way that we play and have that kind of potential. I remember that first half. I'm like, my goodness, like they couldn't breathe. Palace couldn't breathe, right?
Yeah,
they couldn't breathe in that first because of the way we're getting so high up and then pressing so high. But you're going to leave those gaps. But here's the thing. If you have got a William Saliba, if you've got that, then he'll just sweep up on that side anyway.
Yeah.
So I feel a lot more comfortable now going into games. If Ben White is playing at right back, and even if they have got a good winger, I feel a lot more comfortable because I feel like it doesn't matter.
I think this goes back to what we said at the start, right? I don't think the plan was ever to sit back and invite Palace on like that. Mm-hmm. So I think when Mikel Arteta goes back, he will say like, well, we shouldn't have been putting Ben White in that position anyway, because he's there to control the game. And yeah, you're right, like Saliba and the defence as a unit are there to clean up after each other, right? But in an ideal world, yeah, I'm sure I can't remember when he said it, but Mikel Arteta was like, when you go in front, you kill the opponent by just passing it, and you don't give them a chance to get the ball again. We did the opposite of that. We gave them the ball and said, you guys control it and have a go at us. And luckily we're quite good at just defending deep and trusting our defenders to just kind of get a grip on the game. And last season we'd bring on Holding, and he'd add some more defensive security to the mix. But funnily enough, actually, what changed this time, actually, and what changed the swing of the games was actually Mikel Arteta not saying, okay, I'm going to bring on another centre back. He actually brought on Eddie Nketiah and Kieran Tierney, and I think those subs probably came a bit too late. Now I think about it, like he could have probably done it a little bit earlier on, because actually what we needed to do was actually get Palace back in their own half to say, we're in this game too. This isn't going to be a game where you run at us and have a go, even though we're quite good at that. This is a game where we dominate and we try and do that, but we just didn't do that in the second phase of that game. And we just, I think that is going to be the key thing that Arteta will try and figure out, is why on earth did we just stop trying to compete?
There.
Yeah.
I think it's a fair point. I wonder how much of him will also just look at it and go, do you know what? Palace away, done. I've just got that game out of the way, and you know what, like it's just, there's certain games where sometimes the rule book I feel needs to go out the window to some extent. But I think there were lots of like good aspects, like you've just mentioned. I almost forgot about Tierney coming on and actually making I thought a really good difference defensively, and Eddie did well, and I felt Lokonga actually did well when he came on as well. But we got the win, right? We got the win. 3 points, we move. And it was so nice watching the rest of the weekend play out. You've got your win, and then you can just see how everything goes. So looking at the other results, Aaron, right, that happened over the weekend. So unfortunately Tottenham won, and it looked so good at the beginning. They're a goal down against Southampton. But Southampton have been really, really disappointing. Southampton have been really disappointing for a while. Although they did beat Spurs at Tottenham, last season. But Southampton completely capitulated. Tottenham did well. Tottenham won. Chelsea won 1-0. Man City ended up winning, quite comfortably away at West Ham, a tricky fixture, but they won comfortably. And Liverpool obviously dropped points, 2-2, again away from home, but whatever. And Man United were just complete banter. I mean, that
was enjoyable, wasn't it?
Their banter. I've watched so much analysis of that game today, and it's just amazing, because sometimes when you look at real deep analysis of games, and some of these analysts pick out things where actually they did this well, they did that well. We've got all these analysts just genuinely scratching their heads going, this was just not, as in, not even really blaming Ten Hag. So it's like, these guys just basically did all the same crap that they did last season. Just like doing completely mad things. Anyway, the point I wanted to ask you isn't necessarily just to indulge in Man United's misery. More so that from what you saw over the weekend, from results, performances, etc., how have you, if anything, put that into context in terms of Arsenal's results? So, as much as there is that cliche of focus on yourselves and, you just think about the next game and just be the best version of yourselves that you can be, ultimately, where you finish in the league is relative to other teams. So if everyone else is really good, that's not a good thing for you. So what, if anything, have you learned from this weekend? Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. You cut off just before you asked your question.
Oh, did I? Oh,
yeah.
No, I mean, okay, sorry. I'll repeat that. My question was, what have you learned, if anything, from this weekend?
Oh, that's a good one. I think I've realised that if Man City and Haaland turn up and carry on with what they did, especially that second goal that Haaland scored, I thought was really good. If they do that, we've got no chance of catching them. They just looked very good.
Okay, hang on. You need to stop. Hang on. You're doing this thing where you think we can win the league again, haven't you?
No, but I think I'm just giving you my thoughts of what I saw, and the big thing I saw was, Man City are very good, and they're still very good.
All right. There's no need to go. Like, maybe we can't catch them because that's just.
I mean, maybe we can't. Yeah,
Look,
it's gonna mean that we probably win the title in May as opposed to April. No, I'm joking. Look, I think. Yeah, look, Man City look good. I think Liverpool will also continue to be very good. So therefore, what it means is that at best we're fighting for third, right?
Yeah.
And then realistically, I mean, purely on this weekend's results, it's going to be between us, Chelsea, Spurs. I'd say Man United for now, but like possibly Man United, right? I thought Chelsea looked like, and I think we don't look any better or any worse than any of those teams, which is good. I think last season Chelsea for a big chunk of that first half looked really good, and Spurs are Spurs, and it's really hard to read too much into their result on Saturday because I thought Southampton were awful, but if they still got a good result at home, and I think they will be in and around us. Now, the question is, are we better than those teams, and where will it come? And I honestly think it will come. It won't be in these games where we play each other. It will be in games like this where we go to Palace away and we win, right? Can Spurs go to Palace away and win? Can Chelsea go to Palace away and win? I think actually, you look at the teams. Spurs are probably the most likely to struggle against the bottom half teams. I think Spurs have the potential to go to Anfield, go to the Etihad and win, but I actually think they're more likely to struggle against teams like Palace, against teams like Brighton, against teams like Fulham, for example. Although Fulham quite attacking, so they might do all right against them. But yeah, I think we have the squad. Okay, we have the players, and if we keep those players fit, we are on our day as good as Chelsea, Spurs, and Man United. Now, what will change between now and the end of the season is going to be injuries, it's going to be mentality. But I actually feel that, unlike previous years, we have the squad, and we're not going to be hoping for an overachievement. We're going to be hoping for this team to deliver what it's capable of delivering.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with anything that you said there, to be honest. I mean, obviously everything after the bit where you started still going on your winning the league fantasy. Everything you said after that, I agree with you. I think third, I agree with you. I think third's the best that we can really hope for. And I would say that, it feels like on our day we're just as good as some of those teams. I did come away from the weekend feeling a little bit, not pessimistic, but you had that up feeling of the result on Friday. And I did kind of look at it a little bit and I thought, do you know what? Tottenham actually do look quite good. I know it's Southampton at home, I know that. But there were elements of how they scored, how they played, that I felt that they looked like they're in a rhythm. They're certainly not, it doesn't feel like they're going to start badly, at least. Man United, I think that they've just got far too many problems to solve. Like, I think that even if they get round to solving them, it either be too late or there'll be inconsistencies in it. And I think everyone's just kind of one step ahead in where they are as a club, at least one step ahead. And Chelsea, I thought were interesting because I think ultimately they did win. I feel that they've got a world class manager, and I think that they will probably grind out results until they get their groove on. It'll be really interesting to see what signings they make. I still think Chelsea are going to do a couple of really interesting signings this summer. I do think that. So yeah, like I would have really loved it. I know Liverpool dropped points, but I don't see them as a realistic target for us. I really would have loved it if Chelsea or Tottenham, dropped points or looked really poor in some aspect. But I don't think they really did. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. Look, for us, we are looking towards a game this weekend against Leicester. It's a game which is quite interesting because if you look over the times that we faced Leicester over the last few years, it's been quite hard to call. We've had some wins and we've had some losses. We've had some really annoying losses, but we've had some really nice wins. Basically, it's one of those things with Leicester. Leicester have just come off a draw with Brentford where they were leading. I think they were leading 2-0 and they drew 2-2. They're having a weird summer. a really weird summer where there's been this recognition, I think, by Brendan Rodgers that seemingly they need to sell, particularly before they buy. But it feels like they've got to do some selling, and it feels like there's a little bit of a free for all on their squad in some really weird way. I think that a lot of Europe seems to think that they can pick up a number of their players. Kasper Schmeichel's gone quite surprisingly. It felt
that's to me has been honestly one of the weirdest transfers I've ever heard of.
Wow, really?
Kasper Schmeichel is just like, probably you're probably the top 10 goalkeepers in the league.
Yeah, top 10, yeah.
And he's gone to Nice.
But Nice have got a little. These are really interesting, aren't they? They're a bit random club because their managers. What's his face? Who was linked with Palace before Vieira took it? I forget. It's just the word the names. Anyway.
Oh, Lucien Favre.
Yeah, Favre. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I googled it.
There you go. So Favre, who I remember, he was linked with Palace, and then he's like it's an interesting project, I guess, and they've kind of seemingly managed to attract a few players, haven't they? Because Aaron Ramsey is there now as well.
Oh, is he?
Aaron Ramsey plays for Nice. He scored on debut.
Oh, completely missed that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
In his debut. So yeah, and Kasper Schmeichel, yeah, like sort of. No, I agree that it's not. It's less so that he went to Nice that surprised me. It's more so that he's just went anywhere because on the face of it, it looked to me that wasn't planned. It didn't look to me like he had said to Leicester, "Hey guys, by the way, in the summer I want a new challenge," because it doesn't seem like they've done anything to proactively address, getting a new keeper.
They haven't got they've got Ward and this other guy called Iverson, who I've never heard of.
Yeah,
and neither of them have been like. I know Ward is apparently quite highly rated, but generally, I don't think that was ever the plan for him to be a number one. Right. So yeah, it is very. I don't think they've signed anyone, have they?
Not as in outfielders as well.
Leicester, yeah, outfield. I don't think they've signed anyone.
If transfer market will probably help us out on that one. There's no one I can think of off the top of my head, which probably means it's not been any big signings, but they're in a bit of a pickle, aren't they? Because Newcastle are trying to get Maddison. Arsenal have been kind of linked with Tielemans for a long, long time, and it seems like if Arsenal don't get him, someone will. Chelsea allegedly made Fofana their top target.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the spine of their team, and
it is. It
doesn't sound like there's any big names that are linked with, and they're in the worst possible situation when you've got all these big clubs who are linked with not even big clubs. You've got clubs genuinely linked with signing your players, and it looks like a deal might be close. When you're trying to buy other players, people know you're going to get money, and it looks like a little bit of a mess. So we're about to play them when things probably aren't great in the changing room. People are probably looking around going, are you going to be there next game? Are you actually going to be there? Do you know what I mean? There's a bit of that. But we have often seen that Arsenal have a habit of not turning up or something going wrong in games like this, I suppose. What are your feelings, mate? We're coming off a win against Palace. It's going to be the first home game of the season. You're unfortunately not going to be there.
I won't be there, annoyingly.
That's
but
sad.
I will be watching it's a Saturday 3 p.m. kickoff, so I'll be watching somehow.
Don't say using alternative methods. That would be illegal.
Yeah. But no, I actually think like what you said, Roger, is actually quite important. Leicester are, like you said, hopefully going to be a bit all over the place mentally, whereas we should take advantage of the fact that we've had such a consistent preseason. I'm kind of hoping we play the same lineup that we did against Palace, because actually that was a lineup we played in our last two preseason games as well before that.
Yeah.
So, how many teams have been able to play the same starting 11 in their first two league games and their previous two preseason games as well? And that stability, the players need to, they're still, Zinchenko, Jesus are still figuring things out, but they still need to, they get the minutes on the pitch, but they are in a team which knows the role of every other teammate in that team. And I hope that's what gets us through this game, is we are stable, we are ready, and we should have spent hopefully the week preparing for this game in the Mikel Arteta way, which is going to be very tactically detailed. And the only thing I hope is Tielemans isn't putting himself in the shop window for us by just having a stormer. But No, I'd like to think we can edge them at home.
I hope so too. Is there? Because I agree with the lineup. I totally agree that going in, I think with the same starting lineup would be great. And I think that, to be honest, that's probably a smart thing for him to do, because some of the players that would be maybe knocking on the door for a place to start are players who are still coming back from injury anyway, and you can probably just ease them in. So I think it'll be fine. And it didn't seem like we picked up any injury concerns, from the game, from the Palace game. But it's something that didn't really happen against Palace was the use of the 5 subs. I think we made 3 subs in the end, right? And they all looked, as you mentioned, they were quite late in the game. So it'll be interesting to see if he does anything more with that and starts using the 5 subs. Because I'm not sure if there are any stats around how many teams actually use their 5 subs. It felt like Man United, I think, used 5 subs. I think they brought a load of players on in one go at the end. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if that happens. I mean, if there is any player knocking on the door for a start, do you think it's someone like Eddie?
Yeah, I'd say Eddie. Kieran Tierney's still a very good player. I think he's fantastic, and I think he has every chance of getting that left back slot.
At least with that, you could say he's still returning from injury. Maybe they'll still want to just kind of use a sub.
Yeah, exactly. I think, but in terms of those players outside of the 3 who have not really featured in pre-season, I think Eddie's the one who, he looked really good when he came on. There's every chance that maybe the agreement is he gets minutes in the league regularly, and actually we don't give Jesus a start. I find that very unlikely. I think it will almost certainly be the lineup that started against Palace, but what I think Arteta will hope is that we can get a few goals early on and he can feel a bit more safer rotating and getting some substitutes minutes, because that rarely happened last season because we were always just defending a 1-goal lead pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is probably, I'll take a 1-0 win if it's a 1-0 win, but hopefully we can actually get some goals and actually have a comfortable evening or afternoon where we can give players some minutes against a team that clearly isn't super settled yet.
Agree with you. So is that your prediction? You're going with a 1-0?
No, I'll go. I will go 3-0 instead. I think we'll get goals. I think we'll get goals. Yeah.
I was going to go 3-0 too. So I'm going to go.
Should I change it?
No. Why can't we just why can't we just do the same thing? Well, we both genuinely believe that's going to happen. We both genuinely believe it's 3-0. Did you think we were going to win last game?
I did.
You did. So did I.
I predicted 3-1.
I said 2-1. So we got the scores wrong, but we both predicted a win.
No.
So we're on a roll. We're on a roll, co-star. Okay.
Exactly.
So all right, we both think we're going to win, and we've got because this was. Again, I don't want to bloody get complacent, but this Palace game was on paper the hardest game in our run-in until we play, I think, Man United away, which is always, it doesn't matter. Man United could be last in the league, but that game is still going to, they'll find a way to win, right? But we've got, after Leicester, it kind of goes something like Bournemouth, Fulham, Villa, I want to say, something like that, so 2 of those are home games, I believe, right? So we've got Leicester at home, Bournemouth away, and then Fulham and Villa are both home.
Yep.
Yeah. So
and then we go to Old Trafford.
And then we go to Old Trafford. So on paper, this is a winnable run of games. It's also kind of looking like, well, look, Bournemouth won. Fine, and Fulham actually look quite good against Liverpool. Hopefully, being Fulham at Arsenal will be a bit different, and I wonder. It'd be interesting to see how Villa are by then after losing their opening games. We can't look too forward in theory. Who knows how those teams will look in a game or two. But it still does look winnable on paper, doesn't it, mate? I mean,
well, I'll be disappointed if we lose any of those games or if we drop points, right?
Yeah.
And that is the reality of what the expectations are this season. But, this is us, and we've seen ourselves lose very winnable games many times before. So I think we're all still a bit like, I don't know what this team's about yet. But look, I think it's clear that regardless of where you stand on this team, we are somewhat probably magnitudes better than we were last season in terms of personnel. That is without a doubt, right? The question is, how much better are we this season?
Yeah.
Are we 3 points better off than we were last season, or is this the same inconsistent team that still has a tendency to just lose 3 games in a row without explanation? And I think that's what we're really worried about, is knowing that at any point this team could somewhat randomly self-destruct for no reason. And have we learned from the mistakes of last season? But if you look at it rationally, we lost a lot of those games when we lost some of our best players, and we've now added redundancy to some of those players.
Yeah.
So, like I said, assuming we keep these players fit, there's no reason why we can't beat all of them. Fulham is the one I think could be tricky. I think Fulham just seem to love attacking. I think they'll be a bit like Leeds were, in the sense that they're just going to attack, and if they lose 4-0, 5-0, that's okay, because they'll probably win other games 3 or 4-0 anyway. So that could be quite a fun game. But yeah, let's one game at a time. I think if we beat Leicester at home, the place is going to be buzzing, and the belief will be there from the players, the fans, and everyone associated with the club.
Totally agree, mate. Totally agree. So do you think there's been any buzz that can be attributed to this TV show that's going on at the moment? So All or Nothing is airing about Arsenal. Yeah, we really anticipated. It's the #1 show on Amazon Prime at the moment in the UK, and 3 episodes have been released. It's made a couple of cult heroes, such as Aaron Ramsdale's dad.
Oh yeah,
Daddy
yes.
Ramsdale, who is a personal, we can say, is a personal friend of the podcast.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Personal friend of the podcast. So just, for those of you who didn't see on social media, we basically, we were hanging out with him at the pub, basically. We spent a good 3 to 5 seconds with him in the pub.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what was lovely? So we were trying to figure this out. So essentially, when we were at the game, Aaron Ramsdale's dad was clearly a few rows ahead of us, and we were trying to work out if it was him, and it really did look like it was him, and then suddenly people were taking photos with him, so we were like, okay, it's definitely him, and then because he's got wears this very distinctive hat and everything, and then when we were at a pub at the end of the game, and it was a mixed, actually interesting. It's a mixed supporters bar. So Aaron and I had been there before with some of our Crystal Palace friends, and so we were having a drink there, and then all of a sudden, someone basically just tapped us on the shoulder, didn't he? And he basically just said, he said, well done, lads. Thanks, lads. Like, have a good trip home, something like that, didn't he?
Yeah, he said, thanks, I'll see you later. And we were like, oh, it's Daddy Ramsdale, as you said.
Yeah. And then I had to take the opportunity to ask him for a picture, didn't he? And then he was very gracious. He was a lovely guy, very gracious. He said, he did say, "You got to be quick. The train won't wait for me." He took a picture, and he said something really sweet. Where I said to him, "You should be very proud." And he said, "I'm very proud of all 3 of my kids." So that was a nice thing to say.
He does seem like a genuinely good bloke, doesn't he? Like, you see on some of these TV shows, people put on an act, but he just seems like a great dad.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just like an authentic bloke, like just a really good guy. Like, so, and Aaron Ramsdale seems like a top guy. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
I wonder how Aaron Ramsdale feels though, right? He's had a cracking game, made 2 brilliant saves. He's going to go on social media and everyone's going on about his bloody dad.
It's true. It is very true. Yeah. And because on that note, I wonder if his dad, is so willing to hang out at the pubs, with the fans, in a game where his son wasn't arguably man of the match. But But no, but with the show generally, Aaron, and let's not spend too much time on it. We should probably give everyone a rest and let them go and get on with their days. But there's only 3 episodes gone, so there's lots of episodes left. But has there been anything from All or Nothing that so far that you've taken that has that's new information for you, or that you found particularly interesting?
It's hard. I think it's obviously very sanitized, very corporatified, if that's a word, in terms of what Arsenal have done to protect. They've obviously checked it for their brand and make sure there's nothing horrific in there. But there are a couple of little insights, I think, just generally seeing how not just Arteta, but the coaches are with their players. There's Albert who did a session with Smith Rowe at one point when he goes through the video footage. I can't remember what his name is, but the younger coach, who's
Carlos
a personal
Cuesta.
development coach, Carlos Cuesta, who does a lot of one-on-one stuff with Tavares, which I thought was really cool. I've enjoyed that side of things, just seeing how they are when they're slightly, off camera as such. And then just generally just seeing how, various people interact with each other is always quite nice. The stuff about the games, the dressing room stuff, like none of that surprises me. Like they're happy when we win, they're really annoyed and angry when we lose. That's kind of expected. I'd be a bit annoyed if they go back to the dressing room and they're all just having a laugh, for example, when we've lost. But no, I think there's a lot of little things rather than like a headline in there, if that makes sense.
I agree. I found a lot of just positive reinforcement, I suppose. There's lots of stuff that I thought and hope that Arsenal do. A lot of that individual player kind of work and, sitting down in front of the screens and going through. So there's a lot of stuff in my mind they did because that's what high performance teams do. But it was really nice seeing it. And like there's been a lot of comments that people have made around that it's been nice seeing the players as humans, and remember that they're humans. And I completely agree. And I think part of that, what I mean by that is it's nice just seeing them being very, what's the word? Many of them are just really young guys. They're really just young guys who are shy and, not necessarily that articulate and are still trying to work things out. And kind of, it's like when they were talking about Emile Smith Rowe and he was sitting there and, he was trying to do the analysis, and even with Tavares and, when they're kind of doing, when they did that at one of the episodes, again, maybe we shouldn't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but, there's some stuff where they show Arteta does this kind of talk about how they need to memorize where each other is on the pitch. They do that kind of exercise. And I thought that was really cute, cute, but also in a really I mean, these are just human beings who they're not all geniuses, right?
No, they're young human beings. They're like 19, 20, 21, 22.
Yeah.
You've got what were we doing at 21, 22?
Oh my God,
we had no clue about life.
No way.
Right. And they've got all this expectation, and we see them on the pitch, right, as these footballers, right? And actually, we see 20-year-old Saka, or however old Saka is now, as this like complete footballer. We compare him to like a 31-year-old footballer and say, well, they're just footballers. But actually, it made me realize, I think, you look at someone like Xhaka, where actually he's a bit older, and you can kind of see why players respect him, because he's in a room full of 21-year-olds. Yeah. As a almost 30-year-old, like every day. So of course they see him as like the bloke who's like gone through life, who's like, actually like had been doing this for 10 years. It's not, it's more than just are you good on the pitch, like respect. Yeah. It's you know how to handle this stuff. You know how to deal with the pressure at the top level. You know how to handle the crowd, handle the expectations, and become an international footballer, go through that, go to tournaments, and that success. And it made me think, I can see why, previously someone like David Luiz, for example, was really respected. Because you imagine, I can imagine being a 19-year-old player and a World Cup winner. He has won the World Cup. Right? Yeah, World Cup winner that comes into
Champions
the room.
League winner,
Yeah, Champions League winner, league winner. And you're just like, okay, I'm going to respect this guy. And there's pros and cons of that, of course, but that's what it made, like, it's still a very, very young team, and I think that came through quite clearly in the documentary as well.
I now have doubts over whether he was a World Cup winner, but anyway, I get your point. I completely agree with that. Completely, that is really interesting. I think it's a case also, right, where when intense football tactics and all the way that football has evolved in particular, it's so scientific, right? That when we try and understand it and when we try and kind of, read some of this really in-depth analysis, it is quite complicated. And I think it's very easy to assume that all these footballers, these young talents, because they play football, they're going to find it really easy to understand. And that's just not the case. And that's what I found really interesting about it as well. It's just, these complex concepts still need to be broken down in a really simple way, understandably, because these are just kids, right? Even if they do play football,
and they're just different to us in the sense that, you know, we're both professionals who have professional jobs, right? And we go to work every day and we come home, and you know, we went to uni, we went through the education system, all that stuff, right? Yeah. These are athletes who respond to very different things. Like, you know, when we saw those team talks by Arteta, you know, I was like, okay, well, this is a bit, you know, cheesy. It's a bit like sportsy. But then I'm like, well, that's what these kids respond to. You know, they, you know, all they see, they're 20-year-old. They get these talks, and we think, oh, this is a bit cringe because it's like a sports movie. But they haven't watched those sports movies. They don't know any of this stuff.
And even if they have, it's life. That's life, right?
Yeah.
That's what they.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is their life, and it's so hard to just appreciate how they see the world, for good and for bad, I guess. And I do see them as humans, but I see them as humans in a very different way. I mean, I kind of always appreciated this, but it generally made me realize that, they're just very, very different human beings to what, the life that you and I have had.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Totally agree. Cool. So look, I'm really looking forward to the rest of the show because it seems like some very interesting things happen that haven't been covered in the first few episodes. So yeah, I think the next episode's out on Thursday. The next few episodes are out on Thursday. So look forward to that.
Oh, nice.
Obviously, yes. You went. You had a sneak preview, didn't you? You were at the screening. I think we discussed that in the last episode, didn't we? Pretty sure we discussed it in the last episode.
Did we? I don't know if we did.
I
think it might have been the day before the screening.
Ah, okay.
Well, I went to the screening. It was great. I saw it a good
with all the important people.
5 hours before the rest of the world.
That's true. And that was pretty fun, wasn't it? Because there was quite a few different content creators and people who were there.
Yeah, it was a bit weird. So there's a premiere the day before, and I think the A-listers got to go to that. But then the members and like the Arsenal content creator guy, Frimmy, who was there, and it was just pretty good. I mean, I think they hired out the whole cinema, but it wasn't full. Like, they had 3 screens, but the screen I was in was probably only about 25% full.
Oh, really?
So a lot of space is spread out. We got some free popcorn, which was nice, and then just watched. Yeah, it was just basically like watching it on a big TV.
It's not exactly a show that's made for cinema.
Yeah, exactly. And then you go home and that's that.
Very good. Very good. All right, cool. Listen, really good chat. Oof, we always say it's so much nice recording after a win. So hopefully we'll record after another win next time. Aaron, thank you very much for joining, mate. Everyone, thank you so much for listening to us. If you can, please, if you did like the episode, share, subscribe. We really appreciate it. Yeah,
we
please. It means a lot. So thank you, and we will talk to you soon. All right, bye, guys.
See you later. Bye.